Now we're talking about why is this UVA basketball team struggling so much on the defensive end? All right, Chris Graham here, Augusta Free Press. That's I say that just for the YouTube part of this, because I cut this up into for YouTube into a couple of different things. All right, interim UVA basketball coach Ron Sanchez tried to say after last week's last second loss to SMU that he's not quote experimenting with his rotation, which tells us he just doesn't realize he's still experimenting with his rotation. Two reasons why he's still experimenting. He's getting no continuity on offense and no continuity on defense. All right, so that's those are two pretty basic but also very big reasons. KenPom rates the offense 223rd nationally. Now, that's in the area of the likes of teams like Wyoming, American, Towson, Colgate. It's by far the worst performing metric offense in the ACC, the only one sub 200. There is actually a recent Virginia team that finished worse in the national rankings. The 2019-2020 team, that team whose season got cut short by the COVID, finished 23 and 7, won 11 of its last 12, 12 of its last 14. That team ranked 234th on offense, according to KenPom, but also ranked first in defense. Remember that season? There were a bunch of games where both teams were in the 40s. I mean, I think the first game of that season at Syracuse was 48-34. Virginia won. I mean, we think it's tough to watch it now. That season, that season tested our patience, and that was after the national championship. Okay. Now, as far as the offense goes, I don't know that Sanchez, Tony Bennett, if he came back, if Red Auerbach came back from the dead, that anybody be able to get this offense working this year. We're too far along. You're 18 games into a 31 game regular season schedule. You would need a dramatic midseason change of approach. And there's no that staff, they all coach Tony Bennett basketball. That's what they know. And so if that's all you know, you're not going to be able to dial up. Just what do a Google search plays to run. I mean, no, you can't do that. So defense is the only way this team is going to get better. All right. We talked in the last segment about how this team might not make the ACC tournament, which is amazing to think about. We're 5 years plus removed from the NCAA championship. Um, but yeah, defense is the way it gets better. We're seeing it in flashes. Last week, the game with SMU, 45 points given up in the first 39 minutes and 35 seconds. SMU scores nine, three-pointers in the last 25 seconds, wins the game on the last shot, 54-52. But that 54-52 win for SMU, they then went down on Saturday and dropped 117 on Miami. That SMU team came in averaging 84 a game. I mean so that was defensive. That was good defensive work, obviously, by that Virginia team last week. But that effort was sandwiched in between two 80 plus points allowed against Louisville and Stanford. Louisville 81-67, Stanford 88-65. Four opponents have put up 80 plus on Virginia this year. The last time a UVA team had given up 80 in a single game had to go way back to the 2020-2021 season. Twice that year, Gonzaga, Florida State. To get to 480 plus games total, that's where we are this year. To get to 480 plus games total, we have to go back. There's four games over the last 6 seasons. So 4 games in 6 seasons, 4 games this year. All right. What's going on here? Last year's group ranked seventh nationally in adjusted defense, and God, we did not realize how good we had it with Ryan Dunn and Reese Beekman. I mean, Beekman was there for 4 years. Dunn, we only unfortunately had for two before the NBA found out that he's good. He had double-double last week for Phoenix, first round pick. Yeah, we had a defensive stopper on the back end in the form of Ryan Dunn, who can guard any position. So not just on the back end, but he averaged 2.3 block shots per game. Reese Beekman, a shutdown guy out there on the perimeter. First and third, respectively. Dunn was first, Beekman third in the ACC in defensive rating last year. Both are in the NBA because of their defense. I mean, they're both playing. They're scoring too. Beekman is now with the Brooklyn Nets. Ryan Dunn, first round pick of the Phoenix Suns. This year's group only has one guy in the ACC's top 20 in defensive rating, and that's Jacob Kofi. And Kofi's had trouble staying on the floor of late. He had 10 minutes in the loss to Louisville with just one foul on Saturday. He had 18 minutes against SMU, three fouls, but that's not foul trouble limited minutes. That's just limited minutes. Kofi's minutes have been inconsistent. That's been the case with everybody in the front court, and actually some guys in the backcourt. Blake Buchanan, his minutes in the last 5 games have ranged from 11 to 27. Anthony Robinson, from 4 to 14 in the last 5 games. TJ Power's gone anywhere from did not play to 12 minutes in the last 5 games. Now in the backcourt, Tate Murray anywhere from 3 to 28. Davey Ames anywhere from 4 to 28. So you're not getting consistent minutes with these guys. That's because Sanchez is still experimenting. I don't care what he says, he's still experimenting. And I sympathize with him there. His team's losing. It's hard, when you're losing, you're not going to keep doing the same thing over and over. But what he's unwittingly doing is making it hard for his guys to develop any kind of consistency and chemistry on the defensive end. And that can be hard because the Bennett pack line defense, which is what obviously Virginia's still playing, it only gets better when you get consistent reps. It's a demanding defense. Picking up the pack line is tough. Now, here's a quote from Sanchez today. I was on a Zoom call with him, his weekly ACC Zoom call. He said, I wish we could speed up Mother Nature. I wish you could speed up experience. The only way you get it is by being in it. That's the only way you get experience in the pack lines by being in it. And that's a great point. And it's not just being in it yourself, but it's being in it with the group that you're there consistently with because there's so many demands in terms of, I mean, the way you defend a pick and roll at the top of the floor. The big has to hedge on it, and then there has to be help from down low when the if the other team's big drops down from the pick and beats your big back, you have to be able to take away that dive. And that requires the guard, but then the guards also then have to be wary of the ball being kicked out to either corner for an open three. That's just one play of many that, Virginia defends differently than everybody else. There's so many different things. That experience comes with you being in the system, but also being there with your teammates and being able to trust them. Um, Sanchez has been coaching the pack line for over 20 years. He hooked up with Tony Bennett when they were both on the staff, well, for Dick Bennett out at Washington State, starting in 2003. So this is, we're talking 20 plus years that he's been coaching in this system with his defense. He's as qualified as anybody coaching right now to talk about what it takes to run it right. Now he explained it this way in the Zoom talk. Yeah, I just got my explanation. This is a guy who knows a lot more about it than me. He was talking about Anthony Robinson specifically, a 6'10", 250-pound redshirt freshman, how he's picking it up. He said the game is fast. Sometimes in high school, big guys just kind of play the basket and they kind of zone up. And then you get to college and you got to guard a zoom action. You got to go into a pin down, into an away screen. You have to be really continuous in order to be productive defensively. And that's at any position on the floor, unless you're a team that's going to play a zone the entire time. And that's, Syracuse plays a zone the entire time. It's easy to play. It's easy to play defense there. They have some principles in their zone that you've got to pick up on, but you pretty much stand in one part of the floor. you know, in the Virginia defense, I'll challenge you to do this next time you're watching a Virginia game. Uh, when Virginia's on defense, don't watch the ball so much as you watch the Virginia guys reacting to the ball going across the floor. It's like watching a ballet. It's like watching a Broadway musical. There's so much action going on. If when Virginia's playing it right, it looks like there's 7 or 8 guys on the floor. It's because they're so used to getting back and forth in the different parts of the defense. Um, so that's the challenge. You got to be to play that defense right. You've got to be yeah, everybody's got to be on the same page. Um, so working with what he's got, the only guy with any experience in the pack line before this season, back with this roster in the front court, that is, um, was Blake Buchanan, 6'11" sophomore, got 15.0 minutes per game off the bench last year. Buchanan's a Jekyll and Hyde guy right now. 11 points, 15 rebounds versus SMU. 0 points, 2 rebounds against Louisville. It's tough. Kofi I mentioned is had his minutes cut the past two. Sanchez addressing Kofi's minutes said the trend is very natural for a first year guy. He said that the challenges of travel and going from California and back and all the physical things. I mean again you're playing night in night out now against much bigger stronger college guys than you are whether you're an AEU running up and down the court in summer tournaments or playing in your high school leagues against guys that you're probably a lot more physically endowed than. Yeah, it's a different challenge, and maybe he's suggesting perhaps that he's hit a wall. I mean, that's you have to hope that's not the case for our sake, but that's what we're kind of getting here. Um, and he's your one guy with good defensive numbers on this team right now. The other guy in the mix is Elijah Saunders. I mentioned in the previous segment, if you were listening in, that he's 6'8", 242. He's a stout guy, but he's also the best offensive guy on this team and the most consistent offensive guy on this team. And he leads the team in rebounding, but he doesn't often get the best matchup in the post. So um, the he doesn't give you rim protection, really not getting a lot of rim protection from this team. There's no Dunn type to give you that rim protection. There's no Beekman type to give you somebody out there on the perimeter to keep guys from getting into the lane. Um, One of the reporters on the Zoom call today asked Sanchez about the coaching that goes into trying to find a fix, and Sanchez acknowledges tough. He said to cloud guys' minds with more teaching on different things, I think that'd be a mistake at this point. I like to think that the more guys are thinking, the slower their feet get, so we're trying to get them to think less and just play more instinctively. He thinks they're getting closer, he said. They're just not coming along at the pace many would like, but you need time and games under your belt in order to improve. They need they need time under their belt, but they need consistent time under their belt, and that would be the criticism I would throw at Ron Sanchez. So that'll wrap up our podcast for today. If you listen to these individually on YouTube, there was another. We did a more specific preview of the BC game Tuesday night, so go back and check that one. If you listen to both, hey, thanks for doing so. Feel free to drop me a line if you have any questions, comments, anything for me to address, any news tips at chris@augustafreepress.com.